Hello and welcome back. Today I'm showing off some of the interiors that I've revamped in my Versailles Palace Megaproject. These are areas that I originally had very plain walls, plain ceilings, and I went back after looking at reference pictures. These first set of apartments that we're going to see are the apartments of the Dauphine and the Dauphin. The Dauphin being the crown prince of France, and when in the 1760s, the king was Louis the 15th. The future Louis the 16th, his grandson, was next in line. He was the Dauphin, and Marie Antoinette, once she married him, became the Dauphine. So these were her apartments to start with, and it was a series of rooms. Here's her bedroom that her daily court life was conducted at Versailles. Here's a small cabinet or a library that was for her personal use, and next to it was the one for her husband, the future Louis the 16th. For this, I came up with a few new textures, which I made sure to update in the texture pack. This is the grand cabinet for the Dauphin, and here you can see a new door design. I don't have this in the texture pack just yet, but soon I will have it in there. I like it because it's 3 blocks tall instead of just 2. Here we have the bedroom of the Dauphin. And there are a couple of other little surprises that I worked into the new texture pack updates. Here we have the ground gallery, which is beneath the Hall of Mirrors and looks out onto the gardens. And across the way, we have here 2 more sets of apartments. These were for the daughters of the king, Louis the 15th, the aunts of the future Louis the 16th. Here we have a mirrored grand cabinet to the one of the Dauphin on the other side. Here we have one of the bedchambers. And here we have a private cabinet. All of these, I used the official Versailles website for reference on. I'll make sure to link that. There's also a really good blog that I came across. Here's another bedroom that describes all of the different rooms, includes some floor plans, little bits of history about each of them. This was a guard chamber before going into the apartments of the king's daughters. There would be guards stationed there night and day. And there were guard chambers for all of the important apartments for the king, for the queen, for the dauphin, for the dauphine. And some of the other apartments that I've worked on are not on the ground floor, but up in the attics. Now, here is one staircase that I still might change in the future. It's not quite the same as the real life one at Versailles, but I did make sure to change this staircase, which is the king's staircase. It's a more compact staircase. It goes from the ground floor up to the first floor where there are the king's private apartments. There's a library, see? But also, it goes up to the next floor above where there were the apartments of Madame du Barry, who was the mistress of Louis the 15th. And even though she had a series of attic bedrooms, they were very nicely decorated with a lot of gilding. See, here you can see the look out of one of the dormer windows onto the court. Here's a bedroom. And I did have rooms up here originally. I just made sure to come in and change everything to look nice. I made sure to put in some furniture. Now we have some nice fireplaces, more of my custom furniture. And going back down the stairs, we'll go here through the king's private apartments. This was the king's private bedroom as opposed to the king's official state bedroom. Now, here is where the Hall of Mirrors will be. I'm saving that to be the last part of this project that I work on. But everything else adjoining it, I do have finished. See, this is the series of salons for the king, the king's state apartments. And these rooms had different functions depending on what year it was, which king it was. But they would be part of the royal procession at Versailles multiple days a week. The first of them was this, the Hercules Salon, which was just outside of the vestibule for the chapel. And here we have the chapel with the royal balcony. Now, transitioning a bit from the palace as it was for royalty to as it was after the French Revolution, this is a series of rooms that today are art galleries, as much of the palace is. Because after the Revolution, even though there were more French monarchs and also Napoleon and Napoleon III, none of them deigned to live within the palace. They wanted to keep it as a museum for the public to see artworks. That started even in the early 19th century. Here at the other end of the North Wing, we have the Versailles Opera. This was built for the wedding celebration of the future Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, and it's still there today. This opera, I went through a couple of variations on, and the original design, it didn't quite work, but that was before Minecraft had introduced the shelf items. Once shelves were introduced, I was able to put my own textures on those and use them to my benefit for all of the galleries. And you can see that around the opera, I have all of the hallways, all of the passageways, staircases, back out here into the vestibule. Now going back down to the ground floor, going across, we have another series of art galleries. I believe that these and the ones above are generally the galleries of the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, or rather the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what the layout is for those rooms. And you can see I haven't finished this area. This is below the vestibule for the chapel, and a few other rooms that are just empty for the time being. Going across the court, we'll go from the north wing to the south wing. As I had pointed out before, the Queen's staircase here leads up to the Queen's state apartments. But also from the top landing, not only do we go into the Queen's state apartments with the coronation room, but there's also a staircase here to the Chimay attic. This is an attic on the south side of the palace, which I don't have decorated nearly as nicely as Madame du Barry's apartments on the north side, but still somewhat nice. I just don't have the furniture in there quite yet. And I'll make sure to have this continue down the south wing. And if we jump over here and go down to the ground floor of the south wing, overlooking the gardens, we have the Napoleon rooms. These also are recently refurbished. And these run underneath the Gallery of Battles. They're also pretty close to the Congress chamber, which is used for a French Congress. There we are, see? I still need to work on the stairs and galleries around the perimeter. But that's the south wing. And here you can see back over the court. And there's the opera coming into view on the north wing. The high gilded roof for the chapel. Back over the royal court. And you can also see the gardens, which are very close to being finished. Now, here's a map that shows what I've worked on so far. And you can see that I've planted a lot of trees out in the park. And a lot of this project is already done. Now, out in the park, I still have to finish the Queen's Hamlet. That's the only part of the Trianon that still has to be finished. But everything else, the Menagerie, La Lanterne, all of the bosquettes, they are all now finished. I'm still doing a little bit of work here and there on some of the fountains. And here, going down the parterres, take a look at one. I did do a retexture for the allée mob. There we go. Make them look like gold cherubs. I'm still working on the dragon fountain, as well as the Neptune basin, with all the trees around it. But here we have the bosquet of the Arc de Triomphe. We have the bosquet of the three fountains. There are, well, at least I counted, 14 bosquets in the formal gardens. And up until recently, I only had 11 finished, but now there are 14, and they are all done. Shortly here, we'll come across the last two that I had to finish. Here we have another parterre, along with another fountain. And you can see that I was able to summon mobs with no AI, no motion, axolotl and frogs, to act as statues on the fountain. We have another bosquet. The shape of this one was a little tricky to figure out because it's an ellipse that's on a 45-degree angle. But I was able to get it figured out after a little bit of trial and error, and I really like the way that this one came out. Like all the bosquets, it has a central area that's accessed by a series of pathways, not quite mazes. This next bosquet originally did have a maze, but it was something that at some point was replanted, and this is how it looks today. See, it looks a bit more like a park. This is next to the Orangerie, where there are fruit trees that grow even tropical fruit year round. And that's accomplished by, in the cold months, moving the trees inside. All around the perimeter of the Orangerie, there are these large glass doors that lead into a barrel vaulted space where all the trees can be housed. And even in the coldest months, they burn fires to keep them warm. Now, for some of the future things, this is going to be the Grand Common. It's a building that's just outside of the palace. It housed not only the kitchens, but also thousands of servants. And I do intend on building a semblance of the rest of the city of Versailles. There are a few specific buildings I want to do, such as the Queen's Stables. But I want to at least go as far out as I have the Grand and Petite Écuries, which are the stables, the royal stables for the king. So, flanking this very large central area, I'm going to have a series of street blocks and buildings. But that's where I'm at so far. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that you check out the other things on my channel. Also, be sure to download. Also, the texture pack, I made sure to update some of the buttons here, as you can see. I like the way that they turned out. But let me know what you think, and I hope to see you at the next one. Bye.